The Greek philosopher Plato famously said that necessity is the mother of invention, and this is no less true than in the realm of geopolitics. In the case of Russia, increasing isolation and economic pressure from Western sanctions have led to the revival of a centuries-old planned route called the Persian Corridor, connecting Moscow via the massive Volga River with the Indian Ocean. The north-south route would involve rail, ship, and road segments and effectively bypass existing routes, completely cutting out Europe, China, and the Suez Canal. In addition, the new route significantly cuts down on existing transit times, allowing goods to pass through in just 24 days instead of the existing 40 to 60 days. The plan would allow Russia to circumvent existing sanctions, effectively creating a sanction-proof route for oil, grains, metals, lumber, and other goods to flow from Russia through Azerbaijan to Iran and onto India and beyond. The plan is an ambitious one and involves multiple partners with sometimes conflicting interests, including the main players, India, Iran, Azerbaijan, and Russia. The planned north-south route connecting Russia with the Indian Ocean is not a new one. It dates back to the 19th century, to the time of the British-Russian rivalry over Central Asia, known as the Great Game. Britain's fear at the time was the Russian Empire expanding its influence and control southward, through the Caucasus, into Persia, and onward to threaten Britain's prized colonial possession, India. Ultimately, Russia was unable to expand southward to the extent that Britain feared, and the southern route to the Indian Ocean was never realized. However, over a century after the start of the Great Game, the north-south Persian corridor became a reality during the Second World War. With the Soviet Union in desperate need of arms and material for their undersupplied forces on the Eastern Front, developing a viable supply route became of utmost importance to the Allies. The Soviets' only ports at the time were Vladivostok in the Far East, which represented significant logistical and distance challenges, and Murmansk and Arkhangelsk in the Arctic, which required sailing through extreme Arctic weather and bypassing a gauntlet of German U-boats and Luftwaffe. As a result, the Persian corridor became a necessity. When Iran's Axis-leaning leader Reza Shah Pahlavi refused Allied access to the Trans-Iranian Railway, British and American forces invaded and rapidly toppled the government, installing the Shah's son Mohammad Reza Pahlavi as a puppet ruler. The Americans were put in charge of developing the corridor and began rapidly modernizing the existing road, rail, and harbor infrastructure. Eventually, the route through Iran would transport 8 million tons out of a total of 17.8 million tons of U.S. Lend-Lease aid to the Soviet Union. The international north-south transit corridor passes through 4 key nations: Russia, India, Azerbaijan, and of course, its namesake, Persia, or modern-day Iran. Iran's motivations for taking part in the corridor are fairly obvious. Alongside Russia, Syria, and North Korea, Iran is currently one of the most heavily sanctioned nations on the planet. Due to heavy Western sanctions, rampant inflation, and high unemployment, the Iranian economy has suffered heavily in recent years. Although it's currently enjoying a modest recovery, Iranian leadership seeks new ways to take advantage of its key geostrategic position and exploit its vast oil and gas reserves. It's worth mentioning that while Iran-Russia relations are currently warm, this hasn't always been the case. Iran lost massive territories in the South Caucasus to the Russian Empire in the treaties of Gulistan and Turkmenchai in the 19th century and remains skeptical of Russian interventionism. However, despite historical differences, it's easy to set aside old grievances when billions of dollars in trade are at stake. Perhaps the most interesting of the 4 nations involved in the new north-south corridor is India. With a massive and growing population and a rapidly modernizing economy, India's energy needs are vast and growing. The nation is currently the world's 3rd biggest oil importer, and its needs are estimated to continue growing. Combine this with the nation's aspiring great power status and a friendly relationship with Russia, and you have a near-perfect partner for Russian energy and raw material exports. Since the start of the Ukraine war, India has declined to participate in Western sanctions and instead taken the opportunity to import vast quantities of Russian oil at a discount. By the end of 2022, they went from importing nearly 0 Russian oil to over 1 million barrels per day. India's geopolitical stance can best be summarized by quoting Minister of External Affairs Jaishankar when asked about India's stance on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Somewhere Europe has to grow out of the mindset that its problems are the world's problems, but the world's problems are not Europe's problems. Today, linkages are being made between China and India and what's happening in Ukraine. China and India happened way before Ukraine. In the furtherance of developing the trade route, India has been investing heavily in Iran's Chabahar port, situated on the Gulf coast of Oman. In addition to forming the southern anchor of the Persian corridor, This port represents India's naval counterweight to China's investment in the Pakistani port of Gwadar, 150 kilometers to the east. In addition to purely economic motivations, India views the North-South corridor as its strategic alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative. While it may be the junior partner in the group, Azerbaijan nevertheless represents an important link in the North-South transport corridor. The mostly completed Astara-Rasht-Kavin Railway, a major engineering project taking over a decade to complete so far, connects Russia and Iran via a rail line through Azerbaijan. The route is planned to be completed within the next 5 years, at which point the flow of goods through the rail network should increase significantly. Russia has issued a $1.3 billion loan to help finance the project. In addition to the rail line, the port of Baku represents a significant link in the maritime transit of goods through the corridor. While the port is currently being expanded, it remains fully operational and is the largest port on the Caspian Sea. It can handle up to 15 million tons of cargo at the moment and will be capable of handling 25 million after expansion is completed. The port of Baku will likely be at full capacity for the foreseeable future, at least until the completion of the Astara-Rasht Railway. As a result, Azerbaijan stands to benefit significantly and will remain a vital partner going forward. It's worth mentioning that Azerbaijan and Iran continue to have numerous issues which could potentially cause a rift within the group. Key to these issues are Azerbaijan's cozy trade and security relationship with Israel, its close relationship with Iranian rival Turkey, as well as Azerbaijan's interest in creating a route through the Zangezur corridor connecting Azerbaijan and its Nakhchivan enclave, potentially cutting off Iran from key trade routes north. Additionally, Iran has concerns regarding a potential separatist uprising in its majority ethnic Azerbaijani regions in the north of the country. While China is not a member of the North-South Transit Corridor, it's worth mentioning the potential impacts regarding China and its Belt and Road Initiative. Since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, Moscow has become increasingly reliant on Beijing as a political and economic partner, reaching a record high of $240 billion in trade in 2023. Similarly, Iran views China as a key strategic and trading partner. In fact, China is Iran's #1 oil customer and trading partner. While Tehran and Moscow have close relationships with Beijing and cooperate in numerous areas, India maintains a more skeptical view of China, regarding them as a strategic rival rather than a partner. As such, India's views of the INSTC as a strategic alternative to the Belt and Road Initiative must be taken into consideration when discussing the planned route. As a result of the conflicting views of the member states, a delicate balancing act must be maintained to avoid antagonizing and alienating China. Whether or not this can be maintained is yet to be seen, but it presents a serious challenge going forward. While the Persian corridor connecting Russia with the Indian Ocean has long been a plan on paper, economic sanctions on Russia have necessitated the development of the project into a reality. At the heart of the North-South Transit Corridor is the Kremlin's need for new supply routes to bypass the existing routes vulnerable to outside influence. Russia is committed to developing long-term trading relationships outside of Western control, and its partners stand to gain significantly from the successful completion of the project. However, a project of this scope and scale is bound to run into issues, and with each partner vying for its own separate interests, conflict could potentially tear the group apart.